Okay.
Okay. Well, welcome to humans.
Thank you.
That's my extensive intro.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't even have like intro music or anything.
I love it.
So can I just ask you to start off with, could you say your name and where you are, please?
Yeah. Ofelio Flores Resendiz Jr. I am in Portland, Oregon, the northwest part of the United States.
Mhm. Okay. And the big question, who are you? Who are you as a human being? That can be
Mm.
qualities about yourself, interests,
Hmm.
passions, roles, values, whatever you'd like to share.
Yeah. As you ask that, I find myself getting tearful because as I think about this question, it's like it's so expansive. Like, right, like what a question. And last week, and it's relevant. Last week, I we had this consult group for within our practice for Latino bilingual clinicians in in Oregon, and someone started saying, like who they are and where they're from, like from, right? And so I started off by saying I'm from Portland, Oregon, but as a child of immigrant parents, whose parents are from Las Víboras, Durango, and San Lucas, Durango, of the Mezquital region. Um, that feels so, I think given what's happening right now, it feels so important to be able to like claim that.
Mhm.
So I am Mexican American, I am Chicano, Latino, I am this queer brown kid from the rural part of Oregon whose parents immigrated from Durango to the United States to hopefully have a better life, and to offer that to their children. And they did in so many ways, and didn't in ways that they couldn't control because of systems. Um, I am a father of a wonderful 19-month-old. She is sassy and funny and lovely and a little sponge, and I am just so in love with her. And have a partner, Brad, and um, therapist, a Gestalt therapist, I claim now. We, co-own a mental health group practice, so I guess that's part of the identity as well of who I
Mhm.
am. We are trying to create a healthy work environment given all the constraints that white supremacy and capitalism still have a hold on, or you know, we're still
Mhm.
subject to that. And I am what I think to be a funny human being with a little bit of sass and a little bit of bite only when needed. And for the most part, like I've really been leaning into this. Like I am just this like loving human being who is also just human and who sometimes gets stuck in like being angry and mad, but at the core of me I've really been recognizing as I try to attempt more like ancestral work and like checking in with myself, like just a person who wants love and who wants there to just be levity in the world. And I know that that's not
Mm.
really possible, but I want that.
Yeah, and a
um
person who has feelings.
and a person who has feelings,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, who's impacted by everything.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'm trying to stay in a loving space as best as I can. Um,
Hmm.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So, what are some of the values that you orient around as you
Mm.
move through all of these identities and roles and systems?
Yeah, it's evolved over time. I think the value right now is caring, um, a value of justice, a value of equity, value of love, a value of community. Um, I think that one feels the most important. Um, Recognizing what community has meant for my family. Like I think about all like my parents and people around their age who, immigrated from that area of Durango to Eastern Oregon of all places, and Idaho, and how community was their lifeline. These people that they'd grown up with, these people who knew their culture, their customs, their language, people that cared about each other, that took care of one another, that were there for one another in all these ways that I didn't fully understand or appreciate as a little one. That now, as I'm raising my own kiddo, and it's a little different because being gay fathers to this kid, like there's not a lot of queer parents around us or a lot of gay cis male parents around us. And so there's a lot of queer parents, a lot of lesbian parents, and not that that's any different, but there are some context sort of like differences and noticing how much I want community right now
Hmm.
to offer the same thing, right? To offer levity, to offer caretaking, to offer love, to
Support.
offer support, um, to offer all the things that I saw my parents grow up with, right? Like, yeah, they worked really hard, but on the weekends they also were able to sort of convivir, right?
Hmm.
Cohabitate, sort of. And have fun and listen to their music and eat their food and just talk. And I remember just the laughter and the carcajadas, right?
Hmm.
As a little kid, like when I think of that, like that, those are the sounds that come to mind. And I want that right now
Hmm.
more
Yeah,
so than
the,
ever.
the language part of my brain is like, oh yeah, the idea of gathering in English is not the same as convivir in Spanish, which is
Yes,
like it's being alive with.
yes, yes,
It's
yes.
different. It's not just being in the same room as the
Right.
life that's in that word
Yeah,
it matters.
totally. And that's what I want.
Hmm.
And I would say it's a challenge in so many, yeah, it's a challenge in Portland. I'm lucky to have two cousins that live in the area, and we can kind of create or recreate that in a way, and are co-creating it in other ways. And it's not the same. Like I find myself like longing for that.
Hmm. Well, I was going to say, I think you're stumbling on one of the secrets of parenthood, which is that no one knows what they're doing. Your parents made it up, and threw it the fuck, and now you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
that's the
totally.
illusion of competency and authority when you're looking at it from the child's perspective. It's like, oh yeah, dad totally
Yeah,
knows what he's doing.
right,
In the meantime, dad
right.
is like,
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you're saying that because there is a sense of like, we got together, we've gotten together intermittently, but like for the holidays, we did a tamaleada. So for people who don't know what a tamaleada is like essentially your community, your family primarily comes together and they make tamales because it's
mhm,
such a hard, like late day long process. So we hosted at our house and that was the convivir, that was a
mhm,
recreation of what I remember growing up with. And I'm like, oh, those are things that I should know how to do. Because it seemed like my parents just did it so seamlessly. And
mhm,
I think about like when they would host, looking now, I'm like, oh my God, there's so much that I got to do. I have to clean the house. I have to do this. I have to da da da. And it seemed like they just put it together effortlessly. But
mhm.
now I'm like, they probably were dealing with the same stress that I'm dealing with. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
everything is somehow improvised. It works, but mhm.
yeah, yeah,
It's one of those
yeah.
things where if you're like soaking the hojas in the sink, it's not actually the way that it's done. It's because you couldn't find the pot. Um,
Right, right.
mhm.
100% right. And then
And
you grew up
then
thinking like that's how you're supposed
that's
to
how
do
you do it. Yeah. Uh-huh.
it.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
That's how traditions are born, right? But I was
yeah.
going to ask, how is it going for you sort of at these intersections of identity? Because you're like, so there's this Chicano identity, but now there's like
Mhm.
this, gay male adult Portland man. How
Mhm.
are you doing with these multiple identities?
You know, I feel like it's an excellent question. I'm trying to sort of like sit with it and see what arrives. It's a complex question because growing up in Eastern Oregon, I would say primarily white. There were Mexican families, and I remember going to school with other um, Mexican kids, and I knew they were Mexican. Um, and and it's a story that I tell sometimes just to give a little context of like how I grew up and kind of how I viewed myself for a while. Like I thought I was white, like because I grew up like my parents were like you're a U.S. citizen. I'm like okay, cool. I don't know what that means, but okay, cool. But through the socialization and the propagandization of what America is, right? Through TV and like school, I'm like, oh, I'm white, I'm just brown. I don't think that I understood the context. And so I think I just grew up being me. And I think it wasn't until later that I realized, oh, I'm Chicano. And like, what does that mean? And so I think I didn't really take on the identity of Chicano until about high school. There was this organization that started in California called Mecha, which is, I'm not sure if people are familiar with it, but is Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán, which is essentially like a Chicano movement group for students to support them to essentially just sort of like really like a liberation process, but really own their identity of
Mhm.
um, being Chicano, which, children of immigrant parents, kids who belonged in this land for generations, right? And I really honed in on that identity because I think up until that point, I felt lost in who I was. So now, right, I have a stronger sense of who I am, and I have a sense of who I'm not
Mhm.
in the environment that I'm in, right? So I'm not white who just happens to be brown, um, as I thought as a little kid. So it's it's interesting to sort of see myself in this way and move through the world, specifically in Portland, Oregon, which is very white. Um, I think I pick up on things differently. I sense things differently. I wouldn't say it's hard because I think I've navigated this my whole life, like being
Mhm.
in these spaces and um, being a chameleon in a way. Now I think the idea is like I don't want to do that. I want to be more me.
Mhm.
Um, it's it feels. What does it feel like? It feels kind of like I wear huaraches now, like part of my outfit. I'm like, I'm gonna fucking do it because that's what my people did.
Mhm.
So it's like an active resistance, and so it's like pushing back, pushing my brownness
Mhm.
onto the environment in ways that I wouldn't before. It feels radical in a way, but it doesn't feel difficult. It just feels like it is. I don't know if that makes sense.
I mean, the word that pops up is just differentiation. Like, this is what
Yeah,
I am, and that is what I'm not,
right,
instead of
right.
trying super hard to acculturate and pass and be.
Yeah, right. Which boy did I try.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I feel sorry for him, and I also understand him. But yeah, I think now with this intersectionality of everything, like I think like I embrace it and there's pride in it, right?
Mhm.
Because like I am like this queer brown therapist in Portland, and so I have this other sort of processes or understanding that I can offer. I'm also a parent, and so like that's part of my identity. And like it's newer, and I'm still figuring out what that means for me.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's one that's been more challenging, if I'm being honest, because there's so many ideas of what it means to be a parent and how I want to do it and what the right way is, and getting stuck in that, and at the same time being like, no, 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 just flow, just figure it out. Like, just no one really knows what they're doing. Some people do, but no one really knows what they're doing. Um, and their support. And so, I think that that's been challenging because it's activating a lot of my old perfectionistic ways.
Mhm. Well, and I
Um,
think that the idea of Gestalt parenting does have some degree of answer to that, right? In the sense that you can't know. I mean, if you're repeating things from other times and places, those are fixed gestalts and those are anachronic and they're dead.
mhm.
And so being in relationship, with one another, with a child, with whatever, that has to be emerging in that little
Yeah,
co-created experimental moment. That's my way of
yeah,
justifying that I have no frigging clue what I'm doing as a parent.
yeah,
Or it's an
yeah,
experiment, kids. Come on, let's
yeah.
go.
Well, I'm glad that you're saying that because I think that's a way that Gestalt has saved me in a way, in terms of like moving away from these old patterns that I had to survive. That like even though this new identity of being a parent does activate these old ways of being, there's also like this other more chill part. I mean, it's like, dude, just it's gonna be fine. You're gonna figure it out. Just make sure you feed her and love her and all this stuff, and
Yeah.
you just have to figure out who she is, and that's who you're gonna parent.
And
Um,
that's you being a parent.
right, right, right,
Mhm.
right. And with all my parents' wisdom, like my mom, I don't know why it surprised me, but it surprised me. And I think I also borrow from her in a way. But she, as we were older, you know, they were having a conversation about our kid, like their kids, right? And my dad was like, "Well, Junior, me, like I'm Junior, like Junior was so easy. He's just so like well behaved and did all the things, right? Because I had to be that perfect little boy. So I don't think they were grasping that. And then like and then this other, like my younger brothers, like they're more rebellious. They're this, they're that. And he's so like responsible and all these things. And I was like, well, you have to understand, and this is what shocked me, you have to understand they're all different. We have to be different with all of them. And I'm like, I don't know why that shocked me, like coming from my mom, but I was just like, you're onto something. Yeah, that makes a
Hmm.
lot of sense. We're all different. We all have different needs. Um,
Yeah, there's some
it-
relational attunement going on and
right, right.
adjustment. Yeah,
Yeah,
look at that. Your
yeah.
mom's a Gestaltist. Who knew?
Who would have known? Who would have known?
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
I have a specific question for you.
yeah. Okay.
I mean, you've talked about circumstances, but is there a specific event in your life that you would
Mm,
say this was defining, shaping, changed something, or influenced something fundamental in who and how you are?
mm. I think it's a collection of things that kind of go together.
Hmm.
Um, and I was talking about this recently with you about the
So,
the idea as a little kid being a mixed status family. My mom not having status in the United States, they would kind of joke around about La Migra or ICE as it's known now. And there was they sort of instilled this fear of like, oh, this agency, this group can come and take your mom away and send her back to Mexico. And at the time, I'm like, that's scary. Like, I'm gonna lose my mom, and what if I lose my dad? So I think that was one of the moments. I think the other moment is recognizing at a very early age that I was not like other boys.
hmm.
I liked cars and all that stuff, but I wasn't like them fully. And I think looking back now, I'm like, oh, I'm gay, I'm queer. Um, and I think that was another thing that, like, culturally, where I was growing up, it seemed like that was not okay. That was wrong. And I think the other piece of it is being a child of immigrant parents who had to translate for my parents very early on. Try to figure out what these like big words meant and try and translate them to other big words in Spanish. And sort of, so all of this sort of lended itself to wanting to be perfect, right? Because if I'm at least perfect, they'll still continue to love me, even though I'm gay, was the idea that I somehow came up with as a little kid. But also this intense sense of responsibility. I have to help
Yeah,
my parents
being perfect
navigate.
is a giant responsibility.
Huge, right? So I had to help my parents navigate the system that I already understood they weren't a part of and couldn't. And because of me being in school, understanding English and translate it, I had to help that. And then this fear of like my parents being taken away, I really have to help the family so that that doesn't happen. And I think it created like this intense retroflective process for me that I felt I couldn't bring my issues to the family system because it might be overwhelming. I
Hmm.
didn't want to overwhelm the system because I wanted ease and levity, and I wanted because that meant that then they could be around to support me.
Mhm.
And I think that has been pivotal to sort of who I am today around really undoing a lot of that and how easy it is for that to be triggered in certain spaces. Um, but that has been, I think, like the defining sort of moment of like how I came to be. And how it's impacted me, how it's both been supportive but also like destructive, particularly in relationships.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And on relationships, who
Mm,
comes to mind as a human being who
mm,
fundamentally did something to you, with you, in you, changed you?
mm. In a way, my partner currently, Brad, I've already named his said his name. I think there's ways that in this relationship I've stretched around what it means to be imperfect, what it means to need, because I've grown up feeling like I shouldn't need from people. I should just figure it out myself. But I'm very good at like offering
Hmm.
them what they need. Um, I think it's a continuous sort of like it's a frustration on my end with like relearning over and over that I can be imperfect and I can show up and I can need. Um, that has been that has been pivotal. It's still sort of ongoing. Um, I would also say my supervisor, Marie Cacao, she's a Gestalt therapist in the Portland area. She helped me through my licensure process. She helped me, she deprogrammed me from my grad school experience, and like really supported me in trusting myself and my own system and my own wisdom. And uh though she knows I don't she, I'm sure she knows it. I might have to remind her, but it was hugely therapeutic for like I don't know how to put it into words. It's just a feeling of like um really started this process of self-love and self-compassion. Um
I was going to say like acceptance, validation, some of those fundamental things.
all of it, all of it, all of it. And and in a way, my therapist in Mexico, Eduardo, he there's ways in which in therapy I'm such a bad patient or client because I do a lot of the caretaking of for the therapist because like that's my thing, right? Like I don't want you to take care too much of me. I don't want to be too much because then you're gonna get annoyed with me and like go of me. So I do like some
Oh, that's too
caretaking
much.
of.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah. And so we were naming that yesterday. And the way that he just shows up and he's just so like, you don't have to do that. And I've heard that with other therapists. He's like, I'm just here for you. And I don't know, something broke. And I was just like, oh, I get it.
Hmm.
It's still hard to show up because like fully, because it feels like I'm being too much. And there have, friendships. There have been, I have a friend who is also a fraternity brother who, another queer, um, I was gonna say kiddo. He's not a kiddo. He's a man. Um, and I feel like I could just be myself fully with him because he feels like he can be fully like himself fully with me, and like there's a little bit of freedom. We can just be so stupid with one another, and it just doesn't matter. And yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot of folks to name that I think have like helped me feel shift out of some of those sort of like rules that were developed as a kiddo.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of people.
Yeah,
I
it's
really
almost like we're
think about it.
relational beings or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
The community that I still hold on to, that I'm still with, like, yeah, they've challenged me to be in a relationship, but also to, changed something. Yeah, yeah.
So I'm going to ask you specifically, you've mentioned it, in a lot of different ways, but I mean, there's the flat out question is how have you come to understand and experience yourself within your
Mm,
gender or as a man?
mm. It's interesting. My mind goes blank. I'm like, what do you mean?
I figured this out. I can explain this. Wait a minute, hold on. I should make it a process question. Like, how's that going for you?
Sure.
How is that ongoing
Right.
process of,
Thank you. Yeah.
uh-huh.
Um, yeah, what is that? I think
It's
it's
Michelle
been
Obama, it's becoming.
it's becoming, right. Um, yeah, it's interesting. I think it's been confused. Like if we just take this idea of like what it means to be male or my identification process, even within that, I think it's been very confusing as a kid. Because the model that I had, what it was to be male was sort of like the breadwinner, the macho guy who's not scared, who's strong. And as a little kiddo, I don't know if people know this reference to the Rugrats.
Mhm.
there's a character there, Tommy, and then there's a character, Chucky. I always identified as Chucky because I was so anxious and scared about things, which looking back at it now makes so much sense. Um, but I was like, oh, I'm supposed to be brave, and I'm not that. So what does that even mean? And this is where it gets a little fucked up, actually, because then the idea of liking or having crushes on boys at the time, I'm like, well, then does that mean that I have to be a girl since I like boys and scared and anxious all the time? And so like it's been such a weird and lovely path to like deconstructing and reconstructing what it means to be male. And for me, what it means to be male is to just be human.
Hmm.
Like it's not about what it means to be male and female. And I think that there is some importance to that, yes. And it isn't this idea of having to be strong and having no feelings and being brave all the time. And even, as I answer this question, I'm like, yeah, why do I identify as male? Like what, like it's what was given to me at birth. It's what I was told my whole life. It's sex, gender, and all this stuff. And so like, even question like, what does my male identity mean to me? So like,
Hmm.
yeah, it's a question that I'm like, huh. Which is why like I go blank. I'm like,
Hmm.
aside from, yeah, it's interesting. I go blank like in this moment, like what is it to be male other than
So it doesn't sound like you're
gen
super attached to it.
not necessarily, no,
Hmm.
no, other than like, I the sex piece, right? Like my sex and my gender kind of match up, like
Hmm.
that I get. I'm attracted to other males. But yeah, the idea of like this the separation of gender, like I'm not interested in that.
Hmm.
Uh, it isn't like, oh, the woman should be cooking and cleaning, and then the male is like off working and comes, like I don't believe in that. I
Hmm.
never did actually. I was like, this should like when I would see my parents, my dad would cook, and my mom would cook. But even then, there was like some things where like my mom would then do the dishes, or
Hmm.
and my dad might not, but he would do like these man things outside, and I never wanted to do the man things outside.
Hmm.
So I don't know, like that idea to me is just like anyone can do anything.
Hmm.
It's not about
Just put it all back in the
delineation of
center,
gender.
deconstruct it, and take what you will.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not so invested in that, but yeah, I'll get back to you on this idea of like
Oh, yeah,
my
no, keep me
our
up to date
process.
as it
Yeah.
evolves.
Yeah.
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 Ongoing process. Or maybe it's just deconstructing itself and
I think it's
being
deconstructing
transcended
itself.
somehow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that could go anyway.
Mm.
How's aging going for you? How's the age process?
Not amazing. No, I'm
Being
kidding.
decaying
Uh,
body, not as much fun as
decay
you
body,
thought.
I heard it. Where's my youth? No, it's interesting. I don't know if this is like a common experience. When I was getting ready to turn 30, like there was like such an aversion to it. I didn't want to. I,
Hmm.
I don't know. I think there's like the societal thing of like you have to be youthful the rest of your life. I'm embracing it now that I'm 30, what, seven, almost 38. There is everyone would talk about the older you get, the less you care about things. I'm liking that. I don't like being anxious about everything and needing to look a certain way or be a certain way. Um, I am also not afraid of death per se.
Okay.
Um, I'm not afraid of I'm not afraid of not existing anymore. Um, so I think for me, it's interesting to sort of think about like how many like just even yesterday I was talking with Brad, and I don't know how it came up, but I was like, oh, I have probably like another 40 years left in me. That's like another lifetime. It's fine. Um, and this moment, I'm sure it'll change once I get closer to
The other
whatever and
side.
the other side. But
Mm.
in this moment, I'm enjoying it. I like where I'm at. Sure, do I notice some differences? Yeah, but I'm not so bogged down by it. Like I said, I think what I'm appreciating is sort of being able to reflect on where I've been, how I've and where I'm at now, and like the growth
Hmm.
that's occurred, and and identifying more with my parents along their wisdom. Like they would offer wisdom, and and I'm like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. This is a whole different generation. It's a whole different country, but I'm like, the themes remain the same.
Hmm.
Um, and so I'm appreciating getting closer to them in that way.
Hmm.
that I'm finally getting to this place of having enough life experience that there's some wisdom developing. Um, yeah, I'm
It's very
embracing
different than
it.
that like false sense of certainty in your 20s.
Hmm.
You're like,
Yeah.
I know things. It's kind of like, pat, 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 kid. Yeah.
Right, right. Like, sure you do.
Preach.
Okay, we'll let you believe that. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
liking it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So another concrete question, which you have spoken to in a lot of ways, is
Mm.
how are you coming into your understanding and your experience of power and privilege?
That is a really uncomfortable realization for me.
Hmm.
Being that I think growing up, maybe this is the identity switch piece too, right? Around growing up as a kid in a working class family, poor working class, one could say, um, ish, um, that, that's my idea of who I am, right? Like
Hmm.
I'm working class or I'm poor. I don't have enough to do the things I would like to do, so I don't. To now being a co-owner of an organization and having that level of power and that level of privilege associated with that level of power, it has been really difficult for me to move into that power because when I think of power, the way that I thought about it as a kid is people with power and privilege are mean. They're not like, I'm thinking about it from the kid, right? Like perspective. My parents can't have time off because they have to go work. Okay, so the
Hmm.
person needs like they have power over my parents.
Yeah. Well, and it's also
Um,
you have some idea, right? Of like
right.
some people get part of the pie and other people won't.
Right. And that's how I see it. And even though that's what we're trying to deconstruct here, I still see that. And so it's hard to move into my power. And so it's been very uncomfortable to own it. Specifically when it comes to privilege, that I like, oh, I can, for example, when I had to go, I didn't have to, I wanted to, but I did have to in a way, take some time off for paternity leave to be with my daughter. I recognize that not a lot of people can do that. Like I took months off, and then I had to take a few more because we couldn't find childcare. Um, but we had enough savings to be able to do that, and then Brad was able to go back to work, and I could still stay and not have to work to to make more money. Um, and so even though it's nice, there's some discomfort of like, oh, I can do that, but why can't other people do that? I
Hmm.
wish that other people could do that. How do I offer that to them? And that's where then I feel uncomfortable with my limitations because like I can't necessarily make that happen for everybody.
Hmm.
I can do it as best as I can, but like I can't, right? Um, so it's an uncomfortable place to have power and privilege. It's an uncomfortable relationship. Um, and at the same time, because of the power that I have, I can influence the creation of certain programs, which I have. There is a queer trans BIPOC associate training program that we were able to develop with the support of funding. We didn't do it on our own, with support of some grants in the
Well,
state.
but you
We're
don't
able to,
have to do it on your own. I mean, that's part of the power thing. You can be a conduit. You can connect.
yeah. I think that's where like my relationship with power is still a little bit messy because it's like I don't know, and but so figure, and I think that's my challenge. Like, how do I own my power to then be able to translate it in my version of what power looks like, which is very community oriented, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I haven't gotten there. That's my edge right now.
Hmm.
How do I step into power? I should say own it because the power is there, whether I want it or not. Like I have it, right? I have not been
Mhm.
able to step in it and own it
Mhm.
in a way that I would like to. There's a sense of being afraid of it.
It sounds like a bit of a superhero moment where like fireballs or spider webs start shooting out of your hands and you have to figure out how to manage that. Like you can
Yeah.
do things
Yes.
now.
Right. Right. I'm like, wait, that's not who I am. I'm supposed to be that like,
Yeah.
person running
But,
across the
but
street for
now you
safety. Yeah.
you can do things. You have powers.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. 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 I'm
So
still struggling with that one.
mm-hmm. Okay. Let
Yeah.
me know how this goes. Yeah.
I will. I'll follow up.
Okay, so I did not mean to interrupt you, but I want to get back to the projects that you're doing in a moment. First of all, can you tell me like where you and Gestalt hooked up? Like, how did you meet? What was that
Mm.
like?
Yeah, it was Brad actually. So we went to the same university. He had done a doctorate program and had already graduated. We started seeing each other, and I was getting ready to go to grad school, and Pacific was one of the places that I went. And they had a Gestalt training program there for their folks. So that's how he started. He talked about being a Gestalt therapist. I'm like, I have no idea what that is. It sounds woo, but I'm gonna go the psychodynamic route. Like
Okay.
that's what I'm set on, right? Because it seemed like more. It was not CBT, which is it was kind of aversive to that. But he just he talked about it wasn't like trying to convince me, but he was like, oh, look, have you looked at it this way? Very like in all the ways that we work. And I'm like, oh, there's something to this.
Hmm.
Um, and
So
it
like
wasn't until
ambassador, gateway, but not salesperson.
but not
Hmm.
salesperson. Yeah, I am. Because I was still, I'm like, that sounds, I don't know what that is.
Hmm.
Right. And I didn't. And then there was in grad school, there was like a group sort of supervision thing. So we were doing our practicum and we came in and would, case consult. And we had John Frew, who's a mentor, friend of mine now, came in and sat in because the person was out for some time. And as a Gestalt therapist himself, he didn't like I was looking to him to tell us what to do and how to do it, and he wasn't. And I found myself so frustrated. I was
Yeah.
like, fuck this shit. I don't need to be a Gestalt therapist. They don't know what they're doing. Right. And this is from like a very like early onset. And so then afterwards, Brad was like, I have this Marika Cow. I have this person that I think you should interview for supervision if you're interested. I was like, yeah, let me check it out. And it just I don't know. I remember being so like we're getting somewhere, I promise. I remember being at the edge of my seat trying to be like prim and proper, like, okay, I'm gonna be the great student and all this stuff. And she was so laid back and kind of like I remember that she had a smirk in her face. And she's like, I know what I'm getting into. Um, but so I was like, you know what? Like I like this. Like there's like a lot of cultural stuff that I think you can support me with that I think might show up in therapy and great, let's do this. And then I started reading about Gestalt. And then I think I went to IAGT in Toronto.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, I think I'm getting it. And then with the support of my supervisor, who was like she was just unapologetically Gestalt supervisor,
Okay.
which I loved. And I was like, oh, I think I get what you're doing. I'm not there yet, but I get it. And when I really got it, I think what it was for me, why I fell in love with it was very much this. It was what I do now is like it's a human being with another human being. It's about relationship. It's not about getting them to do something. It's not about you being the person that knows what they should do. It's about that relationship that I think my whole life I'd been figuring out how to do.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, here, if I become a Gestalt therapist, I'm going to be pushed to my edge to go there in ways that I hadn't before. And that's what my supervision did. And we built this like lovely relationship. And I love Marie. Like we hang out still every once in a while. We're both busy, but we still have a relationship after our supervisor relationship. And I've continued to train in it. And I just am in awe of how, for me, how wonderful this modality is. And how inspiring, but also like how relieving it is for clients, patients. Like a lot of the folks that I work with, particularly people who are BIPOC, name how much safer they are, how much more comfortable they are, how they feel respected by how I'm with them versus like being told what to do and how to do it.
Well, I think
Um,
it's because it's on the being. It's not
right,
doing. It's not performative. It's not the list of tasks and achievements and things and ways, right? Like,
right. It's about authenticity, which I think my whole life I'd been looking for and was being and like I wanted people to ask me to be authentic versus just be the doer for them. And I think that's what this called for. And it's like it's shifted me so much too. Like it's caused me to grow, or supported me, I should say. It supported me to grow differently. That I yeah, just have so much appreciation for it. And the people who practice it, who I find to be mentors, are so like so chill and down to earth. Um, that there, yeah, I mean, yeah, but that's how I kind of came to it. It's very slow progression, very like resistant to it at first. my own stuff, I think, was resisting it. Um, yeah, I can't see myself doing anything else. Yeah, yeah. Relationships brought me to Gestalt.
There you go. Funny thing, who knew?
Yeah,
It's,
who would have
it's
thought?
relational. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all. So what do you do with it? Like, what does your practice look like? What are your
Hmm.
projects like?
Yeah, what do I do with it? I think, the Queer Trans BIPOC Associate Training Program, part of why we did it is because it's so relational, because it's been so important, particularly with queer trans BIPOC communities, that there be a person who is just honoring their experience, who is interested in that experience, who is invested in that experience, wants to be a part of that experience in the ways that we can, right, that we talk about. I find that that is what would be healing for our communities versus someone saying, "Oh, do this breathing exercise." Well, I'm knocking it. I do have my own bias against it, but this feels important. How do you be relational in the room? How do you engage in that? How do you acknowledge how you're impacting that individual and name it and be with them in that? That I figured I want other folks to and not just me, like Brad and myself kind of co-developed this program and then brought someone else on who's amazing. Um, we wanted to train that into our associates and support them to trust themselves like I was supported to trust myself. The way that a lot of the BIPOC clinicians in this area have been trained to eventually like trust yourself. You have wisdom here, like how to support someone who identifies as you or similar to you. That I wanted to offer that to these trainees as well, associates, I should say. So we developed an experiential component to it, much like we do in Gestalt training programs. We're working and we're kind of teaching some of the phenomenology, the dialogue component, all this stuff. Um, and so that's how I'm bringing Gestalt into that specific program around how, and right now we're working on decolonizing some aspects of it to sort of like to be able to learn from that perspective as well and apply that to the folks that they're working with. And then the other aspect of it is for what I said, our Spanish language program that I didn't develop, but I had always wanted to, but I just didn't have the time. We brought someone on who is perfect for the role. And I think the relational piece of it again is just noticing like why this is important to the community in Portland, Oregon. Um, why this is so needed. Um, and within that program, I think there's other things. We started it's called Sana Sana, and it's like a healing sort of space, support group for other Latini therapists
Mhm.
to come together and just kind of like talk about our experiences in the community and be with one another and support one another. And I think that's where I also bring this idea of like the relational component of what Gestalt is to be in community, to understand how we're impacting, to offer that support. Um, and then, yeah, just, in leadership, I think I can bring that at some level. And then obviously with my patients. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, I remember at the conference in Toronto, someone said it's not about doing Gestalt, it's about being Gestalt. And I try to remember that every single day, like how not only do I practice what I preach, but like how do I continue to do my work to be aware of and to be present with those and understand the impact that I have,
Mhm.
be able to be with it. Yeah.
Something about congruence,
Hmm.
instead of doing the things incongruently
Hmm.
and authentically.
Yeah, authentically as I'm able to, and naming when I can't. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. So what about the Gestalt community? I mean, that mythical thing, place, being.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're a part of it? Are you creating your own? I hear a lot of that. What's
Yeah.
your relationship like with some of those other levels of community system in the Gestalt world?
Yeah, I think part of it is creating it. So, I don't know, member student. I went through the Pacific Gestalt Institute training, and my cohort became very close. And
Hmm.
so I haven't really connected. We kind of are doing our own separate reading group with one of the faculty that we asked for. I haven't been to it in a while because, parenting and life and all that stuff. But I feel like, yeah, I think there's not a lot of Gestalt community in Portland. And I think there used to be at some point, but I don't know what happened. So I think so. My community has been online. It's been my cohort members, and I was also invited to join the board for Gestalt Therapy Institute of LA. And I've like with those board members, I've really developed a friendship, a kinship, sort of like there's a lot that we're trying to do right now. And part of it actually is we're wanting it to be a community for Gestalt therapists, right? Within the LA area and kind of globally as well, because there's members from like we've gotten members from outside of the LA area now, outside of the US. So the idea being like, how do we create
Wait,
this
what? There's
community?
people outside of the US?
Could you imagine?
Crazy. Shocked.
And
Right.
uh, but we are trying to create this community. So I think for me, it's been creating it. And I love being with other Gestaltists. They just get it. They get it. And
Hmm.
I've been to conferences and that's another community that has been, pretty good to connect with. Yeah, different experiences, lived experiences. So I think I'm creating it. Um, and I think that feels important around what I think is missing for me here physically.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm enjoying it. Like I said, like we speak the same language mostly. We get it. And it feels, when I talk about Gestalt therapy with other people who don't understand it, they're just kind of like deer in headlights.
Yeah, there's a bigger gap.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, okay, and then sometimes I get into the like this stance of like trying to convince them, and then I'm like, I don't need to convince them of anything. Like,
Hmm.
I'm just gonna show up how I'm gonna show up. Um, but yeah, I'm definitely being intentional about creating my community, um, and trying to be in relationship with folks. Yeah, and there's a sadness that I also sense because I would like to sort of like go grab beers or a dinner or something with other folks and just like have like an in-person conversation, which in a way I can with Brad, or with John, but like there's something about like being in community too, like in physical presence that I also appreciate. But I'm happy about the community that I am sort of like looking into as well.
And so do you have a next, like where things are going for you, or is this
I don't know. I am just we'll
trust
see what happens.
trusting the
I'm just
process?
trusting. I'm
Hmm.
trusting the process. I mean, I think if I'm thinking about like education piece, like I will always be doing some sort of training. I think
Hmm.
PGI offers like a certification in Gestalt as a Gestalt therapist, like their own specific thing. And I'm interested in doing that, but currently don't really have the time to do all the studying and all the
Hmm.
things that are needed. So maybe in the future, that might be something next as a
Hmm.
Gestalt therapist. But in true fashion, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm very open to it. There might be some things that I'm interested in doing. Like I said, right now we're developing this curriculum with like colonizing principles in Gestalt theory, um, for the next cohort of our QT BIPOC training program, and I'm really excited. I don't know what it's going to look like, but we'll see.
Hmm.
But other than that, yeah, I'm just kind of open to see what happens. I think my main motivator right now is continuing to sort of develop and foster my Gestalt therapy community
Hmm.
of friends, colleagues. Yeah.
I want to ask, what your version or process of decolonizing is looking and feeling like.
Mm,
I mean, for me, it's sort of one of those fundamental, like, this makes total sense with Gestalt. Gestalt is kind of asking for it in like using that hunger and aggression metaphor. Like, you would think it would expect to be deconstructed and chewed to pieces. Um, yeah, there are small pockets of resistance.
of
Uh,
course there are.
that
Yeah,
maybe the colonialism.
100%. I think part of the argument that I'm making with this curriculum that we're developing with in collaboration with John Frew, and the program manager Karina, for QT BIPOC is we're saying, I'm kind of saying we're saying Gestalt therapy can be the foundation to practice some of this decolonizing piece, but we also have to be able to and willing to decolonize what Gestalt therapy theory is and acknowledge where it's coming from. And primarily, we have to be, the Gestalt therapist has to be willing to decolonize ourselves, themselves. And so what does that mean for me? I think it's understanding the way in which, well, field theory, right? Like everything impacts everything, and where does it come from, and what are the lineages of this trauma that has occurred for folks, and what are the different ways of healing, right? Like it's not just talk therapy. It could be temazcales. It could be different like indigenous ancestral wisdom of what healing looks like.
Mhm.
That is what is decolonizing to me, like to really involve and bring forward and cherish the culture of that individual. Um, to be able to normalize whatever that looks like. And so my personal decolonizing process, I think, has been going back to my ancestral wisdom. And um, as colonized as I've been, uh, both regarding what the ways in which Mexico has colonized the land, right? Like and my families and generations have been colonized and wanting to remove indigeneity. I think for me, it's like a loving that I'm indigenous, that I come from indigenous bloodlines. That was the first step to
Mhm.
decolonizing and accepting this brown skin that I'm in and loving the brown skin that I'm in. And further than that, I think it's also understanding that the way that I practice therapy is from a Western lens, but it's not necessarily Western. I think about even for example, like if I'm thinking about the pueblitos where my parents are from, the abuelas had wisdom, right? And they would give consejos, they would give love, right? It's about love. You could sit next to them and, mijo, ¿qué pasa? And they would talk to you. And that's the other aspect of this. You have to love.
Mhm.
You have to love your fellow human being in front of you. Darle cariño, darle amor. And that in and of itself is healing. And so I'm bringing that back into my practice, right? Like when I look at my patients that I work with, what about them do I love? What about them do I connect with? What about them do I know
Mhm.
that resonates with me, and how willing am I to be able to be impacted by them? As I've said, like we have to be willing to be impacted, but can I sit with them in this love and care that like my abuelita would have done? And so there's also like it feels like it's everywhere because I'm also like in the space of decolonizing. It is everywhere. It's sort of like everything's a mess right now. I'm trying to figure out how to like reconstruct it,
Mhm.
um, while continuously learning what that means. Right? Like there's ways in which, like I often say, my own being is both the colonizer and the colonized. Right?
Mhm.
Like as a Mexicano, um, there's both European and indigenous pieces of me in my DNA. And so it's a complex and it's a I'll say this way. I don't fully have an answer yet. It's in process.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm
I think
sitting
it's
here
evident.
listening to you, and I kind of want to respond a little bit to be in dialogue with that
Yeah.
instead of expecting you to be like, I've solved the problem. Here it is.
Hmm.
Right. Because when you're saying, sitting in dialogue, in contact, and in loving contact, and being able to love
Hmm.
this person or system that you're
Hmm.
actively deconstructing, I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that lovingly and have that critical capacity, which means I don't like you or what is
Hmm.
being done. I can love, but that doesn't mean, you know, sort of bowing down to and not criticizing, not
Right.
biting into. I can bite
Right.
into
But
something very lovingly and
right.
intentionally take it apart. That is
Oh,
done with
100%.
love. With love. Like I love my food and I'm still eating it.
Right. And I need to digest it in order for it
Yeah,
to
this
impact,
has to
right?
happen for everybody's good, and it comes from a place of love. And I was
Exactly.
thinking, the you and I,
Mhm.
I don't look like I'm the Mexican trained gestaltist in the room who did have temazcales and the ritual of sharing food and everybody had their grandmother's dish that they brought to the eating
Yeah.
space and where eating together was like one of the more significant like tamaleadas happened in my gestalt
Yeah.
spaces.
Yeah.
That's what it was about. It was like the one from San Luis was talking about her enchiladas and somebody else, and there was
Yeah.
like hybrid salsas being discovered in the lunch period.
Right.
But that is my gestalt because my gestalt
Right.
was in Spanish with brown people in Mexico.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I was given some grace for being, a weird outsider. Um, but I was allowed to be there and to learn that. And so what you said, I'm like, right, oh, I forget that other people centered other things and that that is somehow
Right.
weighted differently. Um,
Yeah.
and there's
Yeah.
still this ongoing, like, God damn it, it's persistent.
Yeah.
The colonial insistence in invalidating other different ways
Right.
of doing, like Gestalt already lives in its own way in Brazil, in Mexico, in any
Right.
number of places. It does not
Right.
have to be corrected and refined and domesticated. That is, it's
Right.
such gross.
And in a way, the way that I view it, it's asking not to be.
Hmm.
It's asking to be alive. It doesn't
Hmm.
want to be contained,
Yeah.
or at least the way that I'm interpreting Gestalt theory, right? Gestalt therapy theory. Yeah, and like I love that you had that experience because that wasn't my experience. My experience was my training happened at least in group, it happened during pandemic, so it was very much online and
Mhm.
totally understood and was grateful that I could still, train and learn. But I do remember in one of the moments bringing my cultura forward, I was like, I wish that like in this break or lunch period, like we could just all like, we're doing the training, we're doing the thing, and then during lunch, like we could just all go grab a taco because I'm sure there's amazing tacos in LA compared to where I'm from, and just kind of like convivir, right? Just like be with
Mhm.
and settle and let our systems just kind of like be with one another. And obviously that wasn't couldn't happen. But I remember myself wanting that. And so yeah, I think part of this well, we talk about aggression, right? Like why it's so important, so healthy, and the digestion piece. I think we have to be critical of the things that we're doing and why we're doing them, question them, love what we're learning and what we're with, and in moments I think topple it, and in other moments carefully deconstruct it.
Mhm.
And it's going to be messy. It's going to be messy, and I think that's the other piece of like decolonizing for me, that I'm just getting comfortable with how uncomfortable the whole process is going to be, and how telling that perfectionist part of me be like, it's messy. It's
Mhm.
going to be messy, and that's okay. It's part of the process. You
Well,
need
but I
it
did
that
that.
way.
That's the aesthetic of being human. It's
Mhm.
and like there's fluids and the digestive
Yes.
process involves shit. Like at the end of the day, I mean that's
Right.
it's the way it goes. It's
Right.
not
Right.
museum grade. It's more like Dada art.
Right. Right.
Uh-huh.
And I love that you're saying that because like right, like there is that part of me that needed to be perfect that is like, no, it has to be museumy, it has to be this. And so I think, I also being okay and embracing and loving the messiness of it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. And I think what makes it easier for me is Gestalt therapy, is how I'm supposed to view things and be with. And I think that's the vehicle that has allowed me to really not just that. I think there's a lot of things, my own experience, lived experience has allowed me to sort of deconstruct and be critical, but that has made it easier for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
Hmm. So now what? Do you think there's any substantial piece of yourself that you're feeling is like waiting for an invitation to come into this conversation?
The caretaking part of me, I'm like, how's this going? How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm fine. Everybody's okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think I'll have to question that because is there a part that I'm not acknowledging, and I just want to be like the gracious guest.
Now, if I've been an asshole, please let me know. Feel free to say this, this is horrible.
And no, 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 this has been great. I mean, I think I have enough trust with you that I think I could say like, oh,
Hmm.
slow down. I've not been feeling that. Yeah, I'm not noticing any part of me that maybe wants to be known right now.
Okay.
Or I feel good.
Yeah, this is starting
Yeah.
to feel like it's completing a conversation. And
Mhm.
I've really appreciated it. And like you said, the trust and the levity and the familiarity
Yeah.
for the like what, maybe 5 hours that I've actually spent time with you.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
this has
Yeah.
been a very easy and very lively connection. So I really appreciated you, and
Yeah.
I'm very glad that we
Yeah.
had the chance to do this.
Yeah, me too. I'm feeling very grateful to have connected with you. Like, I don't know if I sat next to you at it was that decolonizing
Mhm.
workshop in Veracruz. I think I sat next to you and we kind of, yeah, I'm just glad that we could,
We
and
were
you know
in
that.
that room. I don't think we were
Yeah.
physically right
Yeah.
there, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I'm appreciating to this connect. I'm appreciating this connection getting introduced to you.
And I have a feeling we will have more conversations as things evolve and devolve and deconstruct, and
I would really love that. Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, me too.
So shall we leave this one here for now?
Yes. Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.